Hello everyone, my name is Devana Wolf and I'm here today to present to you the art of coffee reading. Some of you might know me by my Muggle name, Holly DeFount, under which I self-published The Incidental Tarot in 2012 and A Curious Oracle in 2015. I've been reading tarot now for about 35 years. It was my gateway drug into divination, magic, and goddess spirituality. Initially, my parents frowned on my interest in these subjects, but after a couple of years, my mom was enthusiastically recommending my services to all her friends. This is around the time I first remember my Armenian grandmother reading the cups. These days, I'm an artist, jeweler, divinatrix, and mother of 3 huskies. In reality, this is my main job. I'm also a sky dancer priestess and sibyl in the Mount Shasta Goddess Temple. For the past couple of years, I've been co-teaching an immersive 2-year Sibyl training with Priestess Yesha Matthews called Via Carmen Pythia, or Way of the Singing Oracle. We're actually in the process right now of developing our curricula into books to make this training more accessible to more people. Throughout this year, I've been meticulously working on book layout, graphics and illustrations, as well as my share of the writing. It's been a really rewarding journey for us, this deep dive into ancient and modern divination methods, and full of fascinating rabbit holes, as you might imagine. We've learned as much ourselves as we've passed on to our students and have become deeply rooted in the lineage of the classical sibyls. Part of my work as a priestess in recent years has been to explore the pre-Christian roots of my Armenian heritage. Being located at the crossroads of East and West, the lands and peoples of historical Armenia were deeply influenced by Persia, Mesopotamia, Greece, and Rome. You may have heard that Armenia was the first nation to declare Christianity as its state religion, but before this there was a vibrant and unique indigenous Armenian religion. The ancient kingdom of Urartu, once located around the region of Lake Van in northeastern Turkey, is a direct ancestor of modern Armenia. When I committed to learning the practice of reading the cups, I found a need to immerse myself in the history and folklore of my ancestors. To that end, I've created a website to help me process everything I'm learning, and hopefully to draw in others who wish to learn about the Armenian goddesses, our sacred calendar, and the rituals and practices associated with the land, including ancient forms of divination practiced by my ancestors. More on that later. What we know of ancient forms of divination, and especially those techniques used by the sibyls, comes down to us from the writings of the classical historians, as well as information that has been deciphered from cuneiform inscriptions of the Near East in the past 150 years or so. Much of what was deemed important enough to be written about centers on priestly and sibylline forms of divination, as that was what was most readily used by the political and military powers of the time. By the term Near East, I'm referring to the regions historically known as Mesopotamia, Syria, Palestine, and Anatolia, or Asia Minor. These are also the regions where some of the classical sibyls were said to be located at oracular temples. We get many of the terms for specific forms of divination from the Greek root word manteia, which means prophecy, divination, or oracle, and the power to prophesy or divine. This comes down to us today in words like astragalomancy, claromancy, cartomancy, and of course, tasseomancy, the practice of reading the cups. The different types of divination practiced in the ancient world are sometimes classified in these Latin terms. Oblativa, those omens unsolicited and freely offered by the gods through nature. Impetrativa, those omens requested by man via tools or techniques, such as bones, dice, or cards. And mediumistic, those omens or messages transmitted by a human, seer, priest, or priestess as the divine channel. Divinely sanctioned disciplines used by priests and viziers often overlapped with early forms of science, such as astrology with astronomy, aeromancy with meteorology, etc. Some of the more learned forms of divination would be astrology, augury, extispicy, and oniromancy. These kinds of oracles required specialized training, either at oracular colleges or the temples themselves. Asia Minor, the territory now ruled by Turkey, was the center of several Apollonian oracles, such as those at Erythrae, Dardania, Didyma, Hierapolis, and Gergitis in Phrygia. There were also healing sleep temples, often dedicated to Asclepios, that were known for dream incubation and interpretation. These may be considered early hospital temples, utilizing a synthesis of purification, ritual, psychological, and physiological treatments for patients. In contrast with these famous and well-documented oracular temples, we have the folk divination practices of the people. This is where my topic of reading the cups comes in today. Before the monotheistic faiths took over these regions, people lived every day in connection with their gods, ancestors, and spirits of place. Everyday rituals would be steeped in the individual, cultural, and spiritual practices of the people. Naturally, they recognized patterns, images, and symbols in their daily life as potential messages from the gods, the otherworld, or the future. We see many of these practices surviving in folk customs, such as baking small tokens into cakes at Christmas, or the breaking of a wine glass at a wedding to see how many children might come of the union. This DIY and sometimes off-the-cuff practice of looking for answers was how most common people divined. Some of these DIY divination practices might include alluromancy, which is divination by the scattering of flour or the baking of consecrated bread; aeromancy, which is the reading the clouds and weather phenomena; dendromancy, reading by trees, bark, roots, and leaves. In Armenia, there existed an ancient cult of the plane trees. People would go to their sacred groves and listen to the rustling of leaves for messages from the divine. And then, of course, we have coffee and tea leaf reading, which probably evolved from other home-based rituals like oinomancy, which is divination by wine sediments or stains. There's an old Scottish tasseomancy manual called Teacup Reading and the Art of Fortune-Telling by the intriguingly anonymous A Highland Seer, which describes the signs and omens an average country person might pay heed to. The Highlander, who coming to the door of his cottage or bothy at dawn, regards steadfastly the signs and omens he notes in the appearance of the sky, the actions of animals, the flight of birds, and so forth, and derives from there a foresight into the coming events of the opening day. So it is with coffee reading. Coffee reading can be done formally or informally, one-on-one or in groups. Often the women of my grandmother's generation and older would read each other's cups as a social ritual after church each week. Sometimes an elder in the family, like my Grammy, would read everyone's cups at a holiday gathering. Whatever the occasion be that may arise, learning the ritual of brewing is the first step. Now I'm going to go through the ritual of brewing the coffee step by step and then pouring. Let's start with the most important ingredient, the coffee. Most Mediterranean or Middle Eastern food markets and groceries will carry pre-packaged Turkish coffee. It is caffeinated and commonly comes with or without cardamom. Usually the coffee is roasted to a medium darkness, though you can sometimes find a dark roast. I prefer a darker roast myself. I just like the flavor. You can also use decaffeinated coffee, ground carob, chocolate, roasted dandelion root, chicory, or other herbs if you wish to avoid or decrease caffeine. Make sure to have them ground as finely as possible, though. You can also add cardamom, ginger, rose water, orange blossom water, or vanilla to taste. The proportions we use in our family tradition are per cup. 1 heaping teaspoonful of coffee, 1 scant teaspoonful of sugar, and 1 demi-tasse cup, whatever size that may be. Usually it's 2 to 3 ounces of liquid. You can adjust the amount of coffee and sugar if using a bigger cup. Put your pot to boil on the stove, on high, but don't walk away from it. In this case, you really want to watch this pot as it boils. I've not followed this rule more times than I want to say and ended up with a big burnt mess. When you begin to see the bubbles forming around the edges of the pot, you're almost there. It will go from tiny bubbles to overflowing lava very quickly, so be ready to take it off the burner as soon as the bubbles start climbing the walls of the pot. Once they do, you're ready to pour. If you're pouring more than 1 cup, make sure to alternate between the cups, like adding ingredients to cake batter, so that the coffee grounds are more equally distributed. It's time to sip your coffee and relax. I like to serve my coffee with a small sweet treat, either halva or gata, a special kind of Armenian coffee cake. When you're almost done with the coffee and you get a bit of grounds in your sip, it's time to turn the cup. Place the saucer upside down on top of the cup and turn the whole thing over, away from your body. And now I'm delighted to share with you a demonstration of this technique. You might want to have some coffee and a snack ready for yourself by the time it's done.
Hello everyone. I am coming to you today from my mom's kitchen where we're going to do a little demonstration of Armenian coffee for you. This is my mom, Ronnie. She's going to be our model and demonstrator today. So here we have all of our accoutrements: vintage ancestral coffee pot, 2 demi-tasse cups, complete with little evil eyes on them to make sure that our coffee doesn't get any bad vibes. Some very finely ground Turkish coffee. You can see the consistency is about that of powdered sugar or cocoa. A little bit of sugar and our water. So Mom is going to demonstrate the proportions that go into the pot. A nice heaping spoonful of coffee per cup. Then a scant teaspoon of sugar per cup. And then we're going to pour just as much water as fits in the cup directly into the pot. 1 and 2. And we're going to give that little pot a swirl and bring it over to the burner. So now the pot is on the burner. You want to get a burner that's approximately the same size as the bottom of your pot so that it heats evenly and quickly. And what we're looking for is for bubbles to start forming around the edge of the pot as the coffee gets incorporated into the water. Right now it's still all like a bit chunky, but pretty soon it's going to smooth out and we'll start to see those bubbles forming, and that's when we're ready to go. Okay, here we are. You can see we're starting to get a few bubbles around the edge there. So you absolutely want to make sure that you're right here ready to take it off the burner, because as soon as those bubbles reach the rim that you see right there, the neck of the pot, you want to take it off. You don't want your coffee to boil over. Okay, time to take it off. Here we go. Okay, here we are with our freshly brewed coffee. We're going to pour a little bit into each cup just to ensure that the coffee grounds get pretty evenly distributed here. Looks pretty good. All right. Okay, here we have our lovely little cups of coffee. Nice little slice of halva for your afternoon snack to go with the coffee. So we're going to sip this slowly. And once you get down to close to the bottom and you get a little bit of the grounds in your sip, that's when it's time to turn the cups. Okay, here we are. Our coffee has been sipped almost to the bottom. Our halva has been eaten, and it's time to flip the cups. So Mom's going to demonstrate first. She is left-handed, and she's going to show us the way that my grandmother always did it, which is just to flip the cup. And you always want to flip the cup away from your body. So Mom flips directly onto the saucer. All right, so the way that I do it is I actually take the saucer and put it on top of the cup. And then I hold the whole thing and flip it away from my body. That way, I think you get a little bit more of an even distribution of the grounds. So now we're gonna let these cups drain a little bit, and Grammy always would touch the top of the cup, and when it was cool, she felt it was ready to turn over again and begin reading. So we'll wait until these little cups cool, and then we'll turn them over. Okay, coming back a few minutes later, these cups are cool, ready to flip back over. So here we go, cup number 1. Oh. Yeah, some interesting markings there. We'll come back to this. Oh, a lot more in this one. Interesting. This one has a lot more grounds in it. Cool. All right, we'll come back with a little bit of interpretation. Hello, everyone. I am coming to you today from my mom's kitchen.
How do you begin to learn the art of reading the cups? I learned from my grandmother and my mother. My Grammy was not one to beat around the bush. She had a very practical, no-nonsense style of reading. I'll never forget the time I brought a new boyfriend over for Thanksgiving, and he agreed to have his cup read. After noting a few moderately interesting points, she exclaimed, to my mortification, "Soon you're going to go on a trip and meet someone new." I said awkwardly, "You mean a friend, right, Grammy?" To which she replied, "Oh no, it's a woman." There was a deafening pause, then everyone around the table awkwardly laughed it off. We broke up a couple months later. Despite this story, which I now find hilarious and love to share, tasseomancy is one of the gentlest and most companionable forms of divination. It gives you and your querent time to relax into each other's presence, chat about the general goings-on, and become attuned to the question at hand while you sip your coffee together. Interpreting the cups can be a highly individualized practice. Every reader eventually comes into their own system of how to see and define the patterns in the cup. But when you're first learning, it's good to start out with one of the two main schools of thought in terms of how to structure your reading. In my family, we read the cups roundabout or clockwise from the handle, which represents the querent. It's helpful to state the period of time you are looking into before turning the cup, so you can clearly define the passage of time in its circumference. We often did coffee readings once a year at Thanksgiving or Christmas, so the cup could represent the coming year divided into quarters or seasons. Cups are read clockwise from the handle for right-handed querents or counterclockwise from the handle for left-handed querents. In the case of coffee reading, you are likely to see most of the formations closer to the bottom of the cup. If there are clear images nearer to the rim, these symbols can be seen as being more influential than those below. The other timing method, which is common in tea leaf readings and in some Turkish coffee traditions, is to read the cup from top to bottom. That is to say, the symbols on the rim will come the soonest or are closest to the querent. Symbols seen on the middle of the cup wall represent those influences manifesting soon or in the near future. Symbols closer to the bottom of the cup often refer to possibilities in the distant future that are not clearly fated yet. There's also a variation of this system that considers symbols on the left side of the cup to be inauspicious, while those on the right represent positive and fortunate circumstances. In both systems, any clear symbols showing up on the wall where the handle is fixed are seen to be very close to the querent or important matters to consider. When using the top to bottom approach to timing, you can add more complex layers of interpretation by dividing the cup into elemental quarters, astrological houses, or your own custom delineations. If using the astrological houses, the handle should be seen as the ascendant or where the first house begins. Again, take notice of whether the querent is right or left-handed and calculate the progression of the houses in the appropriate direction. Some examples of symbols falling into astrological houses. If you see a heart or a ring appear in the 7th house, this could indicate a new relationship or an engagement. Conversely, if the heart is upside down or shows a fracture in the 7th house, be wary of a new relationship that could bring heartbreak. You might see a cluster of small dots in the 8th house. This could indicate an inheritance, as the dots represent money falling into the house of death and transformation. Or it might indicate a promotion and raise if appearing in the 10th house. You might see the image of a broom in the 4th house. This could be interpreted as the home needing a clearing or decluttering in order to get the querent's life energy moving in the right direction for their goals. Whichever system of timing you decide to use, it can be very meaningful to draw your symbolic language from other divination forms you already work with. I believe Mary K. Greer was the first to find evidence of the connection between tasseomancy key cards of 18th century Europe and the Lenormand oracle, illustrating the genesis of that particular form of cartomancy from the common interpretations of tea leaves in cafes and villages across Europe. Every classical tasseomancy guide will contain the same symbols you'll find in Lenormand, albeit with varying interpretations. Such is the diffusion of psychic and symbolic language over time and distance. But this one instance is a good reminder that all forms of divination have a shared lineage of human experience. So interpreting through the lens of your own culture and worldview will only make your reading stronger. Some tips. Look for the standout symbol or mark as the axis of your reading. You can read just signs in the coffee grounds, just the white space, or a combination of both. Note where the symbols are in relation to the querent, i.e. the handle. Are they near or far? Also, consider the heaviness or lightness of the symbols as their probability of manifesting. Common tasseomancy symbols. You will probably recognize these from other forms of divination. Stars, good luck. Lightning, strokes of insight, startling life events or excitement. Circles, good luck or money coming in, potentially marriage if near a heart. Birds equal news. A house, possible moving. Key, new opportunities. Long vertical lines, road or travel. A horseshoe, facing up like a cup is good luck. Facing down, luck slips away. Squares generally portend blockages or difficulties. Mountains, obstacles on the path. Arrows pointing up is a yes answer. Arrows pointing down is a no. Numbers. Numbers can indicate time periods, ages, or addresses. Letters can indicate personal or place names. Also, look out for runes and astrological symbols to add more context to your readings. Now, let's go back to our demo and take a look at what came up in the cups. I'm going to do a very basic read in this cup to show what kinds of things you might see in the coffee grounds, using 1 month as my time frame. All right, looking directly at the handle as representing the querent in this cup, I see a faint serpentine shape at the base of the cup. I'm leaning more toward a modern interpretation of the serpent representing wisdom, healing, and regeneration, rather than the Lenormand snake that often reads as malice or betrayal. So I'm seeing an opportunity for reflection, recuperation, and regeneration arising around the querent. Next, somewhere between week 1 and 2, reading clockwise around the cup, I see the letter M and the image of a stag. The M can represent a person that may come through at this time, the initial of a first or last name, or a title like mom or manager. The stag represents maturity, majesty, and self-possession. I would read this as a positive sign that the querent will have clear authority over a situation and will enjoy a fortunate result. In the next quadrant, I see a couple of small hearts and the number 5. Hearts represent love, joy, and pleasure, so it would seem that mid-month would be a good time for relaxation and pleasurable pursuits. It could be a good time to plan a romantic date or dinner for a party of 5, perhaps starting at 5 o'clock or on the 5th of the month. In the last segment of the cup, I see the symbols of a chain and a castle on a hill. The chain could be read in different ways, depending on the question asked or the other symbols in the cup. It could represent a chain of binding, something preventing the querent from acting, or it could be a symbol of faith, endurance, and loyalty. In this case, considering the other standout symbols of this reading, I might read it as a sign of connection, the links joining together to make something stronger. The very large and clear castle appearing at the end of the month seems to say that success and fruition will result from the efforts undertaken during the month. The castle can represent a fortification as well as a luxurious domicile, a sign of strength and authority, hearkening back to the stag symbol seen earlier. Overall, I would read this cup as a fortunate sequence of events, concluding with a sense of contentment, hospitality, and reward. In conclusion, reading the cups can be as intimate and individualized as you are as a reader. Tasseomancy is not a closed practice, although it is a practice that's greatly enriched by cultural or family traditions. Don't be afraid to explore how the art of tasseomancy has reached you, whether your lineage is of blood, association, or choice. Draw upon the traditions you connect with, then bring your own spirit of intuition and individuality to your practice. If you enjoyed my presentation today, I hope you'll reach out and connect with me. My website, wildempressmagic.com, hosts my blog, my art, and how to book a reading with me. To learn more about the Via Carmen Pythia, our 2-year Sibyl training in the Mount Shasta Goddess Temple, please visit mountshastagaddestemple.com/via-carmen-pythia. And please take a tour of the fascinating indigenous Armenian goddesses on my devotional website, theflamingoftherose.com. And with that, I'll leave you with a very encouraging parting thought. Coffee is proof that the gods exist and want us to be happy. Thank you so much.